All right. Hello, everybody, and welcome. I hope everybody's doing well tonight. We have lots of updates to go over tonight, and some pretty exciting news, I think. So, uh, title of the video kind of gives it away, but we'll go into detail into that just in a minute here. Lazy Man over on the Twitch side, good to see you. Welcome. Before I jump into things, I do want to just take a quick second and just thank the supporters of the channel. Starting with our elite partner, who is the highest tier of subscription over on YouTube memberships and Patreon. That is Javier Alazaran. I'd also like to thank our partners, who are the next tier of subscription over there. They are Gabroli's Inc. and Matt Osgard. And additionally, I'd like to thank the supporters listed here as well under the supporters section. They are a combination of tiers of support over on YouTube memberships, Patreon, as well as Twitch subscriptions. So thank you all very much for your support. I greatly appreciate it. It helps a lot in terms of supporting the channel, supporting the costs associated with running the channel, and soon to be the costs of the next thing that we're about to start. So we'll get into that here right about now. With all that being said, this is an interactive stream, so I do like talking to you guys. We do simulcast to both YouTube and Twitch. We might be expanding that in the future as well, but for right now, it's just those two. So if you guys have any questions or comments or just want to say hi, as long as it's semi-related, feel free to jump into chat. Of course, I also want to thank all of the viewers, whether you're catching this either live or you're catching the VOD after the fact. Of course, without you guys, this project would not exist. So thank you guys for being here. It really means a lot to me from each and every one of you. Ruderick, how's it going? Good to see you. Or is it Rude Rich? I might have just made that way more fancy than it was. But how's it going? I'm gonna go with Ruderick. Sounds better. Anyway, so as you can tell by the it is just Rude Rich. Okay, that's funny. All right, I'll try to bear that in mind. So as you can tell by the title tonight, we actually have quite a few different things going on. So first off, if you happen to see on my Twitter, I actually did go ahead and merge/release 0.8. So that is out in the wild now. I think there's a couple things I might have to actually go back and patch, just minor things, but it is out there. Meaning, that was the goal that we wanted to hit to start developing the game. And we're at a point now where I feel pretty confident we can do that. So let me just pause the music here for a second because I actually want to run the test bed in its current condition. So let me kick that off and just show you guys kind of some of the things that I did off camera so that you guys can see what's going on. So if I load this up and I back away a little bit, you'll see that there are these new spheres that are rendering here, these orange spheres. And those are spheres that tell us basically the outer radius of a sound. So we have sound emitters added. I went ahead and just did that off camera because I really, really wanted to get started with the game before the end of this month. And so I went ahead and did that, and we'll kind of walk through that really quickly. Just on a very high level. It touches on a lot of concepts that you guys have already seen, so we don't really need to do an in-depth dive. But essentially the way that works is once the camera enters this sphere here, the sound will start playing, and then once it leaves, the sound will stop playing. Now you'll note that the music that we had in the last stream is not playing currently. That is because we have tied it to an audio emitter instead. So we actually have two audio emitters here. You'll see that there's two different spheres here. They're slightly misaligned from one another. That's done on purpose. And so we have this single wide sphere here is basically our fire sound. And then we have another music sound, the music that we've been listening to on the last couple streams. That is tied to a second emitter that is actually a child of this car object. So as we actually select the car object and move it around, you'll note that the emitter moves with it, right? So what we have in addition to all of that, let me switch back out of move mode here. So what we have in addition to all that is I did figure out the auto play and stop thing. So if I go into this first emitter here, if you watch the log here, as soon as we enter it, even though we might not be able to hear it right away, you'll note that it says, hey, this audio emitter came into listener range, we're playing. And we're playing on channel 0, that was automatically selected. And so if I go a little bit closer to the origin of that, you'll actually hear the fire sound, right? And so obviously as I back away, you know, that dissipates, right? The other thing is once we leave that, you'll see here that it says, hey, this is no longer in range, we're stopping. So that it's not just sitting there continuously playing even though it's out of range and we can't hear it, right? So we have that, and then we can actually have multiples, right? So if I go back into range here, and then go into the range of this second smaller one, we can actually hear the music sound, right? And this particular emitter, if we go into wireframe mode, is actually right there. It's a little hard to see with all the gizmo stuff in the way, but it's actually right there. So, you know, that is working as intended. And even if I sit here and sort of move it back and forth, you'll hear it pan. Whoops, that's the scale. Get the movement mode here, right? So we can pan it and it just follows, right? Which is exactly what we need in the world, right? I'm not going to save this because I messed up the scale of that. That's fine. So we have that, and in addition to that, I also did a little bit of work on how the sounds themselves actually interpolate in terms of the audio fall off and all that stuff, because the stuff that OpenAL was offering us out of the box just didn't work the way that I needed, and so we actually wrote our own routines for that we're going to go over. So lots of good stuff. This stuff is already out there, released, merged. It's all in 0.8. So I do want to just quickly, very quickly, touch on this stuff really quick, and then we can actually move on. So if we go to, let's see, audio system. Whoops, K audio system, rather. Let's see. Why is my fuzzy finder not finding my system? Okay, that's weird. Should have found it. I guess I just had to search for something different. My Vim has been acting a little bit weird today, so you might see it freak out. I made the mistake of updating it, and that was a bad move. Anyway, so we'll go here to the front end. We can actually close this buffer. And essentially, we do have categories loosely implemented. I'm not really going to touch on that just yet, but we do have that half implemented. I haven't really decided what I'm going to need there, so I kind of half implemented it. But what we have is we have something called attenuation model and audio space, right? And these are two new concepts that we didn't have before. So the attenuation model basically tells us how the sound falls off in space. We can either have linear, which is exactly what you would expect. We can have exponential, which takes the fall off parameter, right? And the higher the fall off parameter, the more quickly the sound falls off. We also have a logarithmic fall off, and we have a smooth step fall off, and they all have their different meanings, obviously commented here. So the one that we're actually using, I believe we set everything to smoother step by default. So that's that, and we'll kind of quickly go over how that works in a minute. The other thing I wanted to touch on is we have this audio space. So we now have a audio space 2D and an audio space 3D. So essentially 2D means that it essentially plays over stereo. It forces it to play over stereo. It doesn't interpolate it based on position or any of that stuff, right? It just completely removes that stuff from the equation. and we'll briefly discuss on a high level how that's done. And then we also have a 3D version of that, which means that it forces it to be a 3D sound. So there's that. And then the other thing is we have internalized audio emitters to the audio system. So all of the properties for an emitter, that's all been internalized into the audio system itself. None of this stuff is accessible or needs to be outside of this. And we have a series of functions where we use handles to access these and set properties and things like that. So I guess we could briefly take a look at that. So we have these right here. We have audio emitter create, load, unload, and world position set. We'll be adding to these as we need to customize them, but these are the ones that we needed to get things working. So these are what have been added for now. And as we need to customize things, we'll go ahead and add functions for this, right? The only thing that we also have to keep in mind here is, let's see, we have, did I do that on the, yeah, so we have audio emitter update, which is basically called during our normal update loop. Emitter update, right? So during our system update, we loop through all the emitters that we have registered. And so all those do is essentially go through and apply the properties as needed. They do that vector3 distance check to either turn on or off the sound accordingly. And then if we're still playing by the end of that, we go ahead and set these properties as we were doing in the scene, right? So it removes all of that responsibility from the scene and just puts it on the audio system. And the audio system just takes it and runs with it, right? With that, let's see. We also have an audio utils file, which contains some pretty important stuff, right? We have our 2 strings for some of our types for deserializing things. That stuff is not the important stuff. What's important is, and actually I'm going to reclose this buffer. What's important is this guy right here, calculate spatial gain. So this replaces those OpenAL parameters that we were using, and instead we use the gain functionality to modify how loud the sound actually is, taking into account a bunch of different parameters, right? So the first thing is a distance. This is the distance from the listener, the inner radius of the sound, the outer radius of the sound, the fall-off factor if it's used, and the attenuation model. And then based on that, we do a quick calculation as to how loud the sound should be. And so we have our different models here, which are relatively simple calculations, right? They're just, they are pretty much what they say they are, right? And I've tweaked these a little bit offline just to so that they sort of sound the best, right? And these are kind of the models that I came up with. And so depending on the model that you use, it will use that to determine what the final gain should be. And then that gain is returned, and we use that for actually setting the volume. So if we take a look at where this is called, which would be in the audio front end right here. This is in the update, right? And so what we do here is we get the mixed volume like we had before, and then we say, hey, if we're in 3D, then we need to figure out what the distance is between the listener position and the bound instance position, right? Or the position of the emitter in this case. And then calculate the spatial gain off of that. And then that is what is then used later on when we set the gain down here, right? And right before we set that, we do apply the mixed volume, right? So the volume still applies as it should. We have the gain set. And that's how that works, right? It's not very complicated, but it's a whole heck of a lot more flexible, and works the way that we need to. It's configurable, all that good stuff. All right. Let's see. I am doing well. How about you? Michael J over there on YouTube as well. Good to see you. Let's see. Lazyman is asking, I was wondering, what is the total size of the project? Like any metrics, files, bytes, lines? I can run clock on it real quick, actually. Let's see. I think I should probably run that here. I don't have. I'm on my Windows box. I don't have that. How do I do that on Windows? What is the equivalent of clock on Windows? Is there a Oh, apparently there is. Do I have npm installed? Apparently. Okay. Npm install g clock. Apparently there's a npm version of it. There's also something on Chocolatey, but let's see. Count physical lines of source code in the given files may be cursive. Do I have to do that? There we go. Okay. So 528 text files, 442 unique files, 316 files ignored. I don't know what that means. That might be the get ignore, which is like our binary files and stuff like that, and our object files. But yeah, here's the basic metrics that we're looking at. So yeah, I hope that helps. That's pretty much everything you asked for, I think. Since we're not doing sound stuff anymore, I can actually turn the music back on. Let's do that. Okay. Why don't you continue the series after the game is shipped? Sort of. Yes. So, I should probably get on to address that, but let me think. Was there anything else that I needed to address? I think that's the high level of the audio changes. I think that might be it. I also fixed a bunch of bugs on the repo that were reported. Not all of them, but I did fix a bunch of quick ones that were easy to address. All right, so the next bit, and probably the more exciting bit, is I have gone ahead and set up the stuff that we're going to need, or the basic working platform for the game, which I also have a name for. So I'm not 100% sure that it's the final name, but it's the name we're going to go with for now. Since we're kicking it off, I really needed something besides just Z game, right? So we are calling it Overdrive 2069, because 69, lol. But we actually have a project set up, and I'm going to go ahead and just run that really quickly so you guys can see what that looks like. And it's a whole lot of nothing, right? We do have a configuration set up. We do have, our window set up with our basic debug text here. And all the typical Windows stuff works, but we don't have any key bindings. We don't have any of the stuff that we'd normally have in our test bed. We don't have that because I want to start as clean and fresh as we can. And so I only took out of testbed what I actually thought that I needed to serve as a good template for standing up the game. So we have essentially our render graph and some of our scenes set up, some of the basic things in the testbed in terms of game state, but not a whole lot else. And so when I say the series is ending, I mean the game engine series is ending. This is where we are going to draw that line, because we are now transitioning over to developing the game. as opposed to just the engine. Now, we are still going to be adding to the engine. We're still going to be enhancing the engine. We're still going to be adding features to the engine, things like that. But that's not going to be the main focus of the series going forward. The main focus of the series is going to be making games, right? And so when I say the main focus of the series, that's why I'm saying the Kohi game engine series ends here. This is going to be the last episode of that. And we're going to be kicking off a new series, which will really just be a new playlist and a new set of titles, right? And this is basically going to be developing this game going forward, right? And so, you know, we're definitely far from done with the engine. We're just getting started, but that is ultimately where we are tonight. So we are finally kicking off the game, and in the beginning of the year, like I said, just a couple weeks later than I really wanted to, but hey, it's the first month, right? Okay. So, I hope all of that makes sense. I hope you guys understand where I'm coming from and all that stuff. So, let's talk about the structure a little bit here. Because I basically stood this up offline, but that's all I really did, right? So similar to what we had for the testbed, we have the Overdrive 2069, K-app, and Klib. So the K-app is just like testbed. It is very thin, right? All it has is just the entry C that defines the same stuff. It looks almost exactly the same as what the testbed version of it did. So there's not really a whole lot to go off of there. We'll take a look at the app config for it, right? So we have the app name, obviously. Most of this stuff we are keeping the same as before. I did find that the asset manifest path, the asset manifest file path was still hard-coded in the code base, so I fixed that to read that in from the application config. So that's what that is. It basically just says, hey, where's this on disk relative to where we are? So whenever we run, we're running with a working directory of the bin directory. And this basically just says, hey, go up a folder, go into K-app, the Overdrive 2069 K-app, and then grab the asset manifest from there. Most of the rest of the stuff in here is pretty much the same. The only differences really are the title has changed, the package has changed, right? And I suspect we may have a few references that might actually need updating for some of the assets and things, but that's there. And this, I think, actually can be nuked. I don't think we actually need that. Let me actually test that theory real quick. Because if we can get rid of that and we don't actually need it, then that would be ideal, and we should get it out of there. I think that's for the old resource system. Yeah, so we didn't get any errors, so I'm confident with that. Okay, so here is our audio setup. This was one thing I did want to touch on. I did think about the configuration of categories, but we're not really using it yet. This is something we're going to have to tackle at some point. So what I did was I just laid out the configuration for it of how I basically want it to work, and we'll go from there. So essentially what this says is we have 8 channels available. We can up that to 16. Maximum number of resources we can have loaded at once is 64. I think that's more than enough. We set our frequency, our chunk size, all that good stuff. And then we have our categories. So I have one for world sounds that has a default volume of 1.0. It's the 3D audio space for all of that, and then the channels are 0 through 5 that it uses, right? So essentially, the way that this is going to work is I want to say when I'm auto-selecting a channel to play my emitter from, right? I want to say eventually, give me something in the world sounds category, right? Give me a channel from there if there's one available. We also have one for the UI sounds and one for music. Like I said, we may have multiple music ones, so we can like layer audio. We may have more than one for the audio sounds as well. We'll see where we land on that stuff. All right. I like the name Velocidad, but the new name is growing on me. Yeah, I kind of liked it too, like, but like it was really more of a code name for me, I guess. It didn't really. The more I thought about it, the more I didn't really like it as the final name of a product, right? So this one I think is a lot more marketable. I think. And again, it's subject to change. Maybe we'll come up with a better one, but this one feels better. Um, all right, so the renderer is largely the same. The fonts, we're keeping the default fonts, right? Default plugins for now, that's all the same. And the render graph we're keeping is the same. So it's set up the same way. We're obviously going to be changing how this works. And we're going to be changing and adding new nodes in here and stuff. But for now, we're basically just picking it up from testbed, right? Thank you for the follow, by the way. Welcome. Okay, so that is the app config. We'll also take a look at the asset manifest. This is much smaller than the testbed one, you might realize, right? So the package name is just Overdrive 2069, and then it references runtime and the UI plugin standard. And then I kept the tree model, right? Just so that we have something to load. This will eventually get deleted too, and we'll replace it with actual assets. But just so we have something to load in the meantime, I've gone ahead and kept that. I kept a lot of the audio that we had. So I kept like the fire loop sound, the test audio sounds, that kind of thing. We'll come back to what that is in a minute. I kept the terrain for now because I'm not 100% sure what I want to do with terrain just yet. So I'm leaving it there, but I'm not going to reference it yet. And then, of course, here are some of the images that support those materials that we had above. And I kept the skybox, which is all of these guys here. I kept our terrain height maps as well. But again, those are probably going to go as well. I just kind of wanted to have an example of them in here for now. In fact, did I actually leave the assets in here for that? I don't think I did. You know what? I'm gonna get rid of the terrain on second thought. You know what? When we get ready to do terrain, I'll get it working in the test bed, and then we'll create a new one for here. So let's actually get rid of that. We don't want or need that anyways. Okay, so it's just the skybox, that tree model, the materials that are in it, and then the images that support the materials. Now, this right here is our sort of test scene. So I don't 100% know that this is going to be the naming scheme that I'm going to stick with, but essentially the game is going to work, how the game is going to work rather, is each scene that we go through, or each level that we go through is going to be a track, right? It's going to be a raceable track that you can navigate on, right? And so I'm thinking that we're just going to call the individual scenes tracks, right? So we're starting off with track 00, which is going to be our first one that we're going to put together. This is just a scene, as you can see, KSN scene, right? And so that's the first thing that we're going to start actually building, is a track, right? So we've got that, and I think that about covers it in terms of the setup for this, right? It's actually, there's not a whole lot to it. Oh, we didn't actually go over the code. Should probably do that. So I guess I can go into this real quick. There's not a whole lot of code in here, right? We have one file for types, which I'm not even really using yet. And then we also have a main CNH and something for the version, and that's it, right? So the main header file basically gives us all of the application entry points that we need for dynamic loading. So there's nothing too surprising there. And then the main C file is about 1,000 lines of code, but there's a lot of things in here, you know, to do re-enable. You know, there's a lot of stuff shut off. And we only included some of the things that we're going to need. Like I said, I want to build most of this from scratch, but there are certain parts from the testbed that I was able to use to get this up and running quicker. So what we have, some of the things that we did keep, or the things that are in here that we did keep. Obviously, we need a running flag. We have a world and an editor camera, right? This is just like world camera and world camera 2 in the test bed. Here, we're going to have 2 different cameras that we're going to maintain. We're going to have a world camera, and the world camera is going to be attached to the back of whatever vehicle that we're navigating with, and it's going to follow that around. You're not going to be able to move that camera by itself. And then we have a editor camera, which will be able to be moved, right? So that's one of the first things that we're going to build, is the ability to toggle back and forth between those with something that we're going to call a camera mode. We may eventually have one in here for like cutscenes or something like that. We might actually, you know what, in fact, we should probably call this. We should probably rename this. Let's call this vehicle camera, right? Because the vehicle camera is always going to be attached to the player's vehicle, right? Or a vehicle. And then we can just have another one for cutscenes, right? We're not going to use it right away, but it'll be there. And then we have current camera, right? And so current camera is going to be used for all rendering operations, right? We're not actually going to reference these at all in our code when it comes to drawing things, preparing the frame, all that stuff. We are only going to reference current camera. The only time we're going to reference these is, the only time we're going to reference these is if we actually need to move them or do something, act on them in some way, right? But in terms of rendering, we're going to look at this. And what that's going to allow us to do is, just by changing the pointer to what camera we're talking about, we'll be able to very quickly and seamlessly change cameras, you know, for one reason or another. Okay, so we have width and height. That's kind of just the overall application width and height of the window. I'd like to get rid of those, but there are some UI elements that rely on it, right? So they're there for now. We also have some convenience pointers to the audio system, the UI system. So we have just some convenience pointers there. We're keeping our clocks just to keep track of how long everything takes, so that we have some form of metrics on the screen at all times. Last update elapsed, that also is along the same lines. We have our forward render graph, and then we have our track scene, right? So this actually probably should go up here with like the camera stuff, because this is more of a game state thing more than an application state. And in fact, we might actually wind up switching that up a little bit, right? We might split game state off into its own thing, separate from application state, but we're not going to go there just yet. Okay, and then we have a viewport for the world and a viewport for the UI. The only difference between these is basically the type of projection matrix that's being used with it, right? We did retain render mode, although we have no way to set it now. We do have render mode available so that we can pass it on to the shaders, so that we can actually, you know, render stuff in the different modes. So we want to keep that functionality. And then we have some stuff here that I put hack, right? And this is sort of our debug stuff that we don't want to be present on release builds. We're not excluding it yet because we're not near far enough along with the project to worry about stuff like that, but we kind of want to group this stuff together and start thinking about, you know, what do we want to exclude on a release build? And so that debug text that shows, maybe that's something, the debug console, maybe that's something we want to exclude. The editor gizmo, right, doesn't really need to be there. So there's that. We're also not really utilizing the frame data at all. So that's something that we should probably be utilizing as well. All right. And then we just have a few things here in terms of startup, right? So here's just the game state allocation, setting some flags, reading in the config, our frame allocator size. That's how large our frame allocator is that we use every frame for things like that need dynamic allocation within the context of a single frame that we can wipe out. It's just the linear allocator underneath that. And then we're registering the gizmo render graph node here, and that's done here because we don't always necessarily need to use that on release builds. To do is key maps and console commands, so we're going to be setting those up as well. Key maps, we're definitely going to be setting up one of those tonight. And then initialize, so we fill out our convenience pointers up here. If we're in a debug build, we go ahead and create the debug console. Here's where we're going to register for events that we're going to create, like window resizes or application shutdown, that kind of thing. And then, let's see. Here's where we read in the render graph, right? So we process the render graph. This is all stuff carried over from testbed. We load the debug console if it's debug. We set up our viewports, right? So we just have 2. So all that stuff's the same. We set up the clear color. I used a little bit of different clear color on this. We have blue in the test bed. I went with sort of a purple for this game just because it visually separates it so that I don't accidentally mess it up somehow, especially in the early stages, right? And then we create our editor gizmo. Again, we're only going to do this in debug mode eventually. We set up some UI elements. This is really just the bitmap text that shows in the lower left. And so this is where we need that height, right, is to be able to lower left align that. So we'll eventually come up with a better way of doing that, but for right now, that's what we use that for. Let's see, we set up our cameras. And we set up 2 different cameras. One is the vehicle camera that we have the sort of default perspective on. And then we also have an editor camera, which is basically just using default properties for that, right? So there's that. We set up our clocks. We set up our volumes for our audio channels. Again, this will all eventually be config driven, right? And then we finalize our render graph right here, right? In the update loop, there's not a whole heck of a lot going on here either that you haven't already seen. Some of it we've got blocks commented out, right? Just because we don't actually have stuff in place yet. Things like getting the camera position. We're using the current camera there, whatever's assigned. Using the viewport, which this probably is going to have to be. No, that's fine. Let's see. And then if the track is loaded, if the track scene is loaded, then we go ahead and perform updates on it and, various things that we need to do in there. This is just some debug examples. And let's see, all of this stuff is still in place from what we had before. We probably ought to take this whole block and move it into state running, right? Because it doesn't really make sense to do any of this without the state being running. Let's see. So this is just tracking mouse state. All of that stuff I retain just for debug purposes. So here's where we build out that string to pass to the UI text based on all these properties. And then prepare frame is like a really lightweight version of what we have in testbed, right? And so this is basically all of the render graph feeding data to the render graph. And you can see I've got to-dos and hacks in here all over the place, right? So we're going to be resolving those as we build this thing out. This is shadow cascades, all that stuff. And then debug lines and all that good stuff, right? So we have that. The render frame is really simple, right? So we do a lot of the work in prepare frame, and then render frame just basically kicks off the render graph. We handle window resizes already, as you saw, so those are good to go. And then obviously the application shutdown, unloads, that kind of stuff, right? This is all the code that's in here. It's not a whole heck of a lot at all. I was kind of hoping it would be a little bit more lightweight than this, to be honest, but we can kind of tweak that as we go. All right. First time chatter, welcome. How are you doing tonight? Dr. Elliot, good to see you as well. Hope all is well. Let's see. Been waiting for this moment since 2021. So at some point you're going to start a series about making games in Kohi. Yep, exactly. So that's what this is going to, after this episode, that's what we're going to start, right? So this is sort of the transition moving from the game engine series to game development series. So an editor is coming up soon. So the editor, my plan for the editor is we are going to build our editor tools into the game. And then when the game is ready to ship, we are going to extract the parts of those editor tools that we want, and we're going to put that into a separate editor application, and that's how we're going to build our editor. So we're essentially going to build the editor as we need it. That way we don't get sidetracked by building an editor and not actually building the game. Let's see, as a child I thought cutscenes were videos, like MP4 or AVI files played by the game. They used to be, actually. Yeah. Especially before the hardware could actually handle it. So, yeah. Originally there was even a game that used Apple Video in tiny squares of the places on screen that changed, like animations, hybrid image and video rendered game. Was fun to break, yeah. QuickTime integrated engine. Yeah, that's kind of the old school way of doing things. We don't really have a need to do that. We're not going to be doing that here. We're going to use the game engine to render everything for cutscenes, which I don't think we're going to have a lot of, but we'll certainly have some of them. Owen Codes, how's it going? Good to see you. It is going well. All right, so all that stuff out of the way, I think we are actually good to start talking about what we need to do and start getting into actually making this thing. Right?
9-month sub, you know what that means. It's a boy.
Smudge. That's hilarious. Thank you so much for the sub. I appreciate that. Oh, and you did it in 6 months in advance. Thank you. I appreciate that too. Very, very much. Thank you for the support. Yeah, we're kicking off game dev tonight. All right, so the first thing I can think of that we need, before anything else, there's a couple things we need, right? So remember I said that we don't have key bindings. We don't have any way to sort of manipulate anything within it, right? We just have this empty shell that runs, which is here. Right? This is what we're starting with. And it looks a lot like the testbed, but it's obviously much, much lighter. Like, I don't even have the escape key to close thing, right? We'll probably rip that out of testbed and use it, but I want to see if we can, keep this somewhat clean as we go. Although we're going to do a lot of hacking stuff as we figure out features. But the first thing that we need, I think, is we need probably key bindings set up so that we can not only quickly and easily exit out of the game, but also we can do things like switch cameras, right? So one thing that I want to be able to very quickly and easily do is switch between the vehicle camera and the editor camera. Now, obviously, we don't have a vehicle yet, right? But the way that we're going to make this is we're always going to default to the vehicle camera. And then if we're like in debug mode, we can switch over to the editor camera and do things that we need to do, and then switch back to the vehicle camera. Thank you for the follow. Appreciate that. All right. So I guess keybinds are kind of the thing that we need to do first. So I actually want to take a look in. I want to take a look in testbed where we set up our game keybinds, right? Because this is something that I kind of do want to emulate a little bit. So I'm going to take, let's actually split this and put the main C over here and the source that we're going to copy from over here. All right, so I guess we're going to try and keep everything, for now, we're going to keep the code mostly in this main file. And then we'll move it later once we start like actually expanding on stuff, right? So the way that I'm going to handle this right now is I'm going to make this static. And we need to include core key map, game on escape callback. All right, so whenever we hit the escape key, it's essentially going to put this to the console and then fire an event to quit the application, which the engine will pick up and start the shutdown process, right? So obviously we need to take this to the top here, and we need to forward declare it. I'm going to do it underneath these structs that we have here. All right, and then let's see where this is used, right? So set up key maps, right? Let's go ahead and do. Let's see, we have the game instance here. Does this, we pass that on as the listener, right? So we probably ought to hold on to that. And I'm trying to think if we should have, we probably should have a couple different key maps, right? We should have a global key map. And then we have this other thing called testbed key map. We're actually not going to have that. We're going to have two different key maps aside from the global key map that I can think of, right? So the global key map always runs, right? It always will do the thing no matter what, unless we override it by another key map that's pushed. So I think the way that we're going to work this, we'll have a global key map, like a vehicle key map, an editor key map, and probably we'll need one for menus and that kind of thing too. Which eventually, obviously, we're going to have some stuff set up to handle controller input as well down the road. But let's do static void, and we're going to do setup key maps, right? And I guess we can take the application in. And we're just gonna call this app, right? We did game inst everywhere over here in testbed, and I don't really want to do that. I want to call it app. In fact, let's rename this one to app, right? Because we're gonna have probably a different game state. And so I kind of want to be. I don't want to say that's the game instance because it's the application instance, which is not necessarily the same as the game. So we're just going to call that app everywhere. I think that makes a little bit more sense. See here, we called it app inst, right? Just change that to app. And then that should be fine for that. All right, a couple more. All right, cool. Okay. So actually, we'll have setup key maps. And I guess remove key maps. We probably need that too. Because when we hot reload the game library, we're going to need to reassign these function pointers, right? So we'll do static void remove key maps. I don't know that I'm going to stick with that nomenclature, but for now, that's what we're going to stick with. All right, so for setup key maps, we essentially want to use, we do want to keep this, right? So we want to keep the global one. So this just needs to be app, right? And then that gets called here. I don't think we actually use it for anything, but it is there in case we need it. So that's our global key map. And then let's see. We are going to treat the testbed key map similar to how we treat the it's basically going to be the editor key map, right? So let's see out of this what we want to keep. So this is camera control. We want to keep all that. This is the grave key, so that's game console change visibility. We want to keep that. This is movement. We want to keep that. This is the setting the render mode. We want to keep all that stuff. Setting the gizmo mode, gizmo orientation, that stuff we want to keep. Load and unload we may keep. I might just move those over. Save scene we might need eventually later. Play sound, toggle sound, we're not gonna keep those. And then we also have some debug stuff here. VSync toggle I might keep. Print memory metrics I might keep. But I think the rest of those we're probably not going to worry about too much. This just prints the debug camera position, which we're always printing to the screen anyway. So I don't think we need that. So I think what I'm going to do, I'm going to copy. I'm going to copy this. And I'm actually going to grab, we also have in here a console specific key map. Which is that drop-down console that we get from the top. And we assign some different controls for that. And that gets pushed as well. So we're going to take that as well, I think, actually. And then console visibility stuff is good. Okay, so let's actually take this whole bit, right? We're not going to have any of the callbacks and stuff. That's fine. We're basically just going to go through and trim this. As we need stuff, right? So, let's see. Is this rename going to fail because of all these errors? It might. Nope, it didn't. Okay, cool. So we're going to call this the editor mode key map, right? And so that will be used when we switch to the editor camera. We'll basically use this particular key map. Which means I'm not going to push it for right now. Because we need another key map, which is what we're going to call, I guess, the world key map. World, or maybe normal mode. World mode key map. Right, it's basically your typical world controls, right? So I'm just going to copy pasta this for a second. And we're going to change this to, whoops, I need this as well. Right, and so instead of editor key map, we're going to say world key map, right? And the world key map, we're going to use the C key to change cameras, right? And so this is going to be change camera, change current camera, I guess. Oh, wait a minute. That's game inst. We should do change current camera, right? We need to replace all these game insts with app. Okay. All right, so now we just have a bunch of callbacks that aren't set. Okay. So we want to do change current camera there, but then we also want to do in editor mode, we want to add it here as well. Change current camera mode, right? And so the idea here is whenever we hit the C key, we're essentially going to toggle between these two modes just by switching cameras, right? And we may wind up making it a little bit more robust than that, but that's kind of my thought for now, is that that's the way that we're going to handle that. So I guess we'll do, we can do that one first, I guess. So I'm just going to copy this, actually. And we're going to do change current camera, right? We don't need to debug every single time. Let's see. Can we do... let's see. I think, didn't we put the game state in the C file, didn't we? That's going to be a mistake. We need to actually strip this out and put it in the types file. Oops. Let's do that with the frame data as well. Let's take both of these, and let's go to our H file here, which we don't have anything in. And this is where all the types are going to live, right? So we're going to have to add all these types in here again. Oops. Viewport. I think this needs to be... I don't know why this one won't import automatically. But that's what it needs. All right. So that's that. That'll be a little easier to understand in here anyways. That's probably where it should exist. And then we just need to include that types file. Now, if we go down here, we should... I don't know why this cast is all the way down here. It should be up here. Right? So this is going to be game state. I might change the name of that structure to be completely honest, but now we have the state, right? And we probably, I don't know if we need to pass through the whole application state or not, but we could also use that to get frame data, so maybe we should. We'll see. We'll see where we land. Let's see. We use third-party physics engines such as bullet physics, etc. Eventually, Singy, but not for this game. We're actually not going to use any physics library for this game. We are going to make this without a physics library. And I already have ideas on how I'm going to do it. I don't think we need a physics library for this. I think we can... It's going to be a simple enough movement model that I don't think we're going to need one. So rather than introduce all that complexity and overhead, we're not going to do that. But the system we come up with will be more than sufficient to handle what we need to handle, right? It's not going to be that complex of a movement system, so I'm not too worried about it. All right. Now that I'm thinking about this, so this is always pushing key maps, but we do not actually hold on to anything except the console key map. That's wrong. So we should actually keep a reference to these and own them outside of here instead of just doing this. So let's go to let's go to our H file here, and we'll store them in our game state. So let's see, where do I want to put that? I guess that's kind of up here with the state-ish information. We can put it here, I guess. Key map. And we're going to do global key map. Right. And then we want a world key map and a console key map, right? That should do for now. I think that's... Didn't we have one more? Global? Oh, editor. So like I said, we're going to build in our editor tools into the game, and that'll help us quickly iterate our editor tools, and then we'll be able to extract them later on into an actual editor. All right, so instead of doing this, we're going to do state global key map, state world key map. Oops. Okay. There we go. Okay, so we're going to have to add that in front of everything, but that's fine. Let's see, we're going to keep those, keep that. We're going to keep these for the editor key map. Rendering modes. Gizmo modes. Load and unload. Whoops. Those, I'm not 100% sure that we're going to use right away. Oh, I guess I could leave them in there and just not hook them up to anything. So save. I guess I could put it in there and just not do anything with it. Play and toggle sound. Okay, those can go. These two can go. VSync, toggle, and print memory metrics. I guess I could hold on to print memory metrics for now. You know, I want to write some better. I want to write some better handling for that. Some better utilities for it. But I think all we're going to do here, we're going to set up the key maps, but we're not actually going to push them, right? We're only going to set them up. So all these things in here where we're doing push, we're not going to do that going forward, right? At least not here. Overrides all is true. That should probably be true also for the editor key map. The one exception to that being probably escape. Okay. All right. So, let's see. We have yaw and then pitch. We don't do any roll, right? So, I think we need to do... We need these guys. In fact, move forward, all this stuff, all this camera movement stuff, we need all of this. Move down, console change visibility. Yeah, we want that one too. Set render mode default. Yeah, we want the render modes. So we're actually going to wind up copying up most of this stuff, I think, actually. Set gizmo mode. Yep. Orientation set. Yeah, we want that. Game on load scene. Okay, so some of this stuff, the way we had it wired in the test bed is not how we're going to wire it here. So you'll notice that one of the sort of running themes here is that we fire off events for a lot of different stuff. And we're just not gonna do that, right? Instead of firing off events, we're just going to, in place of that, do the thing that the event would have handled within the gameplay code on the testbed, right? Because there's no reason to also have it, handle the key press and then fire off an event just to be handled somewhere else in a different file, right? So we're not gonna go that route with this stuff. Let's do a. Thank you for the follow, by the way. Welcome. Let's do a find and replace on testbed game state. And we want to replace that with overdrive 2069 game state globally. Okay, so that's that. That should fix a lot of our issues. Now I'm also going to take these and all of this stuff I'm actually going to move to the bottom of the file, because once we have these sorted out, we're not really going to need to update them, right? Including these two. So let's take all of these, go down to the bottom of the file. Put them here. Remove key maps. Yeah, okay. So we basically just need to add static to all of these guys. Which is a lot of them. But this will save us a lot of time from having to completely reinvent the wheel on all of these guys. Oops. Right, because all these are doing is just firing off messages, which I guess I did in the test bed just to kind of test the message system, but or the event system rather. But we really don't need to be doing that. All right, debug console stuff. Okay. One more thing I need to do is grab all of these one more time. Let's see, up until change, well, maybe even including this one. Go to the top of the file, and we need to forward declare this stuff, right? So we have setup key maps, and then we'll do a paste here, but we can actually make this really quick. So we can just do a change to matching curly brace and just swap it out with one of these guys, right? And just get all of our forward declarations up here. Now, one thing that we could do, obviously, is we could like put some of this stuff into like a massive switch statement, which I might wind up doing in the future. But having it separated this way makes it very easy to say, okay, well, let me just jump quickly to the definition of what I'm trying to maintain. And it makes it very, very easy to work on that way. So just compress this a little bit. There we go. All right. Now, we just have a few. Once we get past all of this stuff, we have a couple that we didn't get, but we have most of the errors worked out. So we need game undebug vsync toggle. So there it is right there. So we need that, and we need print memory metrics. So we need these two as well. So let's go to the very bottom here. Paste these guys in. All right. And then change out the state on that. Oh, we have alloc count. Previous alloc count. You know what? I don't want to do this anymore either. I'm going to get rid of that one. So I'm really just going to take this one and go up here and slam that one here too. Okay. Now, we should mostly be resolved. We don't need that one anymore. We still do have a few errors, but I think that's mostly in the callbacks at this point. So what we're going to do is go over to the main file and just sort of take the handler of all these different functions and figure out a better way to make this a little bit more direct. The first thing I'm going to do, though, is we're going to change current camera. So we're going to do, let's see, user data is, we basically just need a copy of this, right? And then we need to do state current camera equals. Okay, so what's the current camera, right? How do we want to handle this? So right now we're going to just switch back and forth between the world camera and the editor camera. But we need like some sort of camera mode, I guess we could say. Or like an input mode, or maybe a game mode. I guess game mode kind of makes sense, right? So let's do a enumeration, game mode. Game mode, and we're going to say game mode, and we're going to come up with a few different things, right? So we want world, editor, and then we want, I don't know, like menu. Maybe we should say main menu, right? Pause menu, right? Because we want to support pausing. And then I don't know. We might come up with other states, right? Those are just going to be the ones that I do for right now. So next to current camera, I guess we'll do game mode. And we'll just call it mode. Now, we have render mode here, which is something different, but game mode is, yeah, we'll go ahead and current mode of the game, which controls inputs, etc. Right? So if we go back, change current camera. Right now we're only going to handle two of those things, right? So we're going to say if state mode equals game mode world, right? Then we're going to do state mode equals game mode editor. And we're going to do state current camera equals state editor camera, right? Else if state mode equals game mode editor, then we'll do state mode equals game mode world, and we'll do state current camera equals state world camera. What did I call that? Vehicle camera. And then else stuck in unknown state changing to vehicle, I guess. We may want to default to something else, but we'll say state mode equals game mode world. We can actually just copy this, and we'll use the vehicle camera, right? Just so we have some sort of fallback there. When we switch, this is where we're also going to want to push the key map, right? So inputs key map pop. That's going to just pop the current key map off of the stack, which might not always be the right move. We'll have to be careful with how we handle our key map state, right? Let's check that. New key map was popped when, we'll say during world editor. And we'll actually do the same for this and the same here. And we're going to say here unknown to world, and then this is going to be editor world. All right, so we want to pop that the existing key map first, right? And then we want to go input key map push, and in this case we want the editor key map, right? So it's going to be the address of state editor key map. Oops. Right, so we push the editor key map, right? And then when we're switching from the editor to the world, we should be popping the editor and then pushing the world key map, right? And then here, we're just going to push the world key map again, right? We shouldn't ever really hit this case. In fact, let's turn that into a k-fatal, right? We should never actually hit that. That's just in there as sort of a safeguard. Let's see. Looks like we got some questions over here. I have a full-time job in addition to the hobby engine. Yes, I do. It's not in game engine development now as my full-time job, but it was for 5 years previously. Interesting part is what I just learned, that cutscenes during gameplay are known as QuickTime events, and that's clearly what Apple was trying to convey with a QuickTime library. Yeah. Back then, somehow it was an optimization, so if that's true, you can make a lightning fast engine with that design today also. Yeah, but people don't really like pre-rendered cutscenes anymore. It's sort of a thing of the past. I mean, there are games that still use them, but it's usually for like stylistic reasons. All right, so we have that. I guess let's figure out these other errors, and then we should be able to actually test that right off the bat. One thing that we need to do, though, we have not actually set our default mode, right? So we actually need to set our default mode when we initialize the game. So let's do that in application initialize, right? So key maps here. We need to do setup key maps, right? That's no longer to do. And then set default game mode and key map. Oops. We might wind up tying key maps to game modes. I don't know yet. One thing we don't need to do, we don't need to pop this, right? All we need to do is we need to say, hey, the default mode is this, the default camera is, or the current camera is this, and then push the default key map, right? So now that we have that done, we should actually be able to test this once I resolve these other errors down here, which I think some of this stuff is literally just going to be code actions. Whoops. Get engine delta time. Where does that? Ah. Another function we didn't have. Okay. So let's actually put this one at the bottom here. It's another static function that we're going to need. Conflicting types for get. What do you mean conflicting types? Oh, because it's not forward declared. That's why it needs to be here. Okay. So we need to access our timeline system. Put it here. Systems, timeline system. All right. So we have that. Okay. So now we have forward move speed. Let's see, we have the movement speed. So this is where we need to like define, instead of forward move speed, we need to define like camera or editor camera move speed. Probably for forwards and backwards, right? So I think what I'll do is game on move forward. Do I want to set this up as, I guess we should probably do this as editor specific. I suppose that makes sense, right? And I set these to all vehicle camera, which actually is wrong. This should be the editor camera that we do this. So whenever we yaw or pitch, that should be affecting the editor camera only. Because the vehicle camera is going to just be following a vehicle. It's going to be doing its own thing. So we don't want to use it for that. And then the only other things we need is like the move speed. So in here, I suppose we could keep that here, I guess. You know what? Let's actually keep it down with the editor properties. So we have F32, move speed, and what was the other one? Did we call it backward move speed? Backward move speed. Right? And then we should be able to rename these to editor camera forward move speed, or editor camera forward speed. Nah, keep move speed. It's kind of verbose, but well, the rename did not work. Lame. All right. So just have to do this over here, annoyingly. Okay. I think that might be all the errors for now. We do need to what did we use for our movement speeds? That was actually a pretty decent move speed. I'm going to hold on to that for this as well. We can always adjust it later. So that's going to be editor, camera, forward move speed, and backward move speed. Sakelos Music, how's it going? Welcome, good to see you. Limo, it's good to see you as well. I remember hearing you mention a game engine design book that you've read multiple times. Can you remind me which book that is? Yes. It is this one, which is called Game Engine Architecture by Jason Gregory. It's a thick book. 2C thick. But yes. That's the book, if I can get my hand out of the way. And specifically, this one's the 3rd edition. I don't think there's a newer edition out. I think that is the newest edition. Yeah, it is. It's a really good read, and I have bookmarks all throughout. I use it as a reference. Yeah. About to be sleeping in a bit. That's fair. Read that book like 6 times. Yeah. I'm about due to actually go and read it again. Along with the Vulcan spec, actually. Let's see. Okay. Oh, there's a lot of stuff over on the YouTube side. Let me see if I can catch up on some of this real quick. Reason it was changed is because live cutscenes contain custom skins and accessories, so it has to be live updated to current appearance. Too rigid, could still be used in linear games if you wanted to squeeze every optimization possible. It's still a thing, just no need for it. Easier to do it in game live. That's true. Yep. Graphics cards don't burn out like they used to, so that's good news. They usually don't. I've only had that happen once. Kringer's lost. The timeline system was like the last thing you added in the original engine before getting on the refactor tractor for like a year. Yeah, I think that sounds about right. Yeah. Refactor tractor. I was just watching Prime talk about the infinite refactor. Yeah, so this series started off as sort of a tutorial series where like everything was sort of in little chunks all by itself. And the problem with that is you wind up with a whole bunch of systems that don't really work well together. And so we accumulated a bunch of technical debt from that as well. Early on that I just kind of kept kicking the can on, and it finally got to a point where I'm like, okay, I can't start the game until we actually address this. So we did. Just took a lot longer than I thought, but that's usually the way it goes. Um, it did seem infinite at times. Yeah, it's fair. Have to been a Mac fan from the past. Only know Flash-based games made in Mac and Mac emulators in the QuickTime format not being installed made all the QuickTime videos a black square. I've seen that even on Windows. Um, remember it existing without ever having owned a Mac. Yep, exactly. Knew nothing about it at the time. Couldn't play any video using it. Yeah, I remember that. All right. Let's build. And we'll see how we're working, right? Okay. So, what we should see when we launch. All right. And if we take a look at our position, right? If I hit WASD, nothing happens, right? But if I hit C, we should. Oh, did I not bind that? Why is it not working? Did I not call it like a dingus? That's possible. Let's go to here. And we'll take a look at this. We'll set a breakpoint here. Interesting. So that's not even being... Oh, well, let me set a breakpoint. Why? Do I need to clean? It's possible I just need to do a clean. Favorite paradigm, dingus-oriented programming, yeah. Caps lock? No, my caps lock wasn't on. No. I probably just didn't hook something up. And now I've run into one of my favorite issues, which is when Windows hangs trying to build something because the file system sucks. Okay, so I'm going to go in here. I'm going to go in here to the bin folder, and I'm going to delete all of this stuff, and we're going to have to rebuild. Okay. Terminate task. I may actually have to close this and reopen it, annoyingly. See if that fixes it. Yeah. I don't know why it does that. I think Windows just like holds a reference to a file and it just like freezes the entire thing every once in a while. And I've researched into it, and it's a file system issue, unfortunately. Really annoying when that happens. Probably Windows Defender, unless you disabled it. I do have Windows Defender disabled for this folder, but it doesn't seem to have done a whole hell of a lot. From bin to the recycle bin, exactly. Just another bin. Damn you, Windows. Yeah, exactly. And only on Windows, just because I have a driver issue happening over on the Linux side that I haven't figured out yet. Because I made the mistake of updating my NVIDIA driver, and it's rubbish. So that's good. Okay. So we have this here. Let's run. Okay, we'll bring this up, and we'll say, press the C key. Okay, so we are hitting breakpoint. So we do switch modes, and then we push the editor key map. So that should be working. Okay. So let's then I did add these to the right map, right? Let's go to, I don't know, I guess move forward. And we'll put a breakpoint here, right? And we'll just continue. And as soon as I hit the W key, we are breaking. So this makes me wonder, oh, you know what? I think this is dingus-oriented programming, actually. Debug text. I'll bet we are actually using the wrong stuff to get the camera position. Let's see. Position and rotation. I'll bet we're just pulling it from the same camera all the time. Wait a minute, where is... No, it's pulling it from current camera. Okay. So it should be switching back and forth. We default to vehicle camera. Is it possible? Am I missing a step somewhere? I probably am missing a step somewhere. Thank you for the follow. Let's see. Something about state machines make my blood boil. Yeah, I get that. I guess, let me see. Did my fuzzy finder die? Windows terminal is amazing. And by that, I mean it's terrible. There we go. All right. So we acquire the editor camera there and the vehicle camera here. I guess we should call this vehicle, right? If I go to this, that should be getting called when we do camera view get. That should be updated. Do we do something stupid in here that I'm not aware of? Default camera name. This gives us default camera. This is still kind of doing the old hash table stuff. I probably ought to revamp this at some point, but I'm not going to do it now. Creating new camera named. Okay, so did we do that twice? Yes, we did. Okay. So for all intents and purposes, that should have worked then. Camera create. When we call camera create is automatically set the dirty flag. I think it does. No, it doesn't. Because it creates it with identity. So that actually makes sense. So why aren't we getting a different view when we switch cameras? That is really weird. Okay, let's try. Let's try. Yeah, I'm not doing anything stupid in here that I see anyways. So this essentially should just be a 0 position camera. So I guess when we do change current camera, I suppose what I could also do I guess we can say editor camera, and then we'll do 3 floats. I'm just going to do position for now just to see what we get. Y, and this is just a hack. I'm going to remove this as soon as we figure out what it's doing. Just want the Z, right? So we want that, and then we also want this here. Way too late for me. I'll go to sleep and watch the rest tomorrow. All right. Have a good one. Just made a stateless ECS. Don't care if your calculator input is an entity. I don't care what you say. Never let a game dev make your accounting software. Lol. Magettsub, how's it going? Good to see you. Welcome. All right, let's try this again. And we should see let me just see what the so the editor camera is zeroed out as I expected. Okay, and the current camera is not. So it should switch over to that. Okay. And then I think I have it fixed. Yes, okay. So we can see the position here of this is the vehicle camera's like default position. And if I hit the C key, it zeroes out because we switch. Why did it do that so many times? Oh, that's what's happening. Oh, that's funny. Okay, so it's doing it every time I hold down the key instead of just on a press. Okay. That actually explains a lot. Okay. So I think what we're going to want I could have swore that we had something in here to prevent that. I could be wrong though. Oh, I literally put it in there the wrong way. This should be the bind type press instead of bind type hold. That's what I get for copy pasting. Your app needs a larger font and Coda streamer mode next. Yeah, it is kind of a small font, I guess. Once we actually load it up. Alternative win key plus minus keys. Yeah, I mean that would be an interesting thing to put in for the UI for sure. Eventually, I am going to have it handle. So like this is a high DPI device. This is a 4K screen you're looking at, which is why it's so tiny. If I move this over to like one of my other screens, that's just a standard DPI, then it doesn't look as small. But yeah. Okay, so now a single key press does that, right? Or does it not? It looks like it's doing it twice. Okay, so we do have movement. I can move it around. And I can switch between cameras, but for some reason it's still giving me... Why is it triggering it twice? Command exit doesn't exist because I haven't added it. That's actually kind of funny. Yeah, so if I hit this, it does it twice, even though that is a press. Why is it doing press and release? It should just be when it's initially pressed, but for some reason it's doing both. I wonder if that is a long-standing bug that I just haven't been aware of. Binding add. I don't remember this being broken. Process key. So if it's a repeat, allow key repeats. I don't think we're doing that. I don't think we allow for that. Or do we? So here's our check for that. So if it's press and pressed, then we do the callback. Or if it's not pressed, this logic's actually wrong because these are bit fields. So technically we can combine those. Like we could do a press and release, which technically I guess doesn't make sense, right? Well, I guess yeah, it does, because you'd allow both. Like you would activate it on press and release, which is what it's doing now. Yeah, so this is actually not correct. So if unset is detected, stop processing, that's fine. But we should actually say, should do a bitwise check on that. And then this is get rid of the if else there and turn this into two separate statements, right? So if it's pressed and the binding type has this flag set, then we do this. If it's release and it's not pressed, then that means it must be a release. Then we make the callback. That makes more sense. Still doesn't explain why it was doing both, though. Let's see. If allow key repeats or changed, do we don't allow it by default. And I don't see anywhere where we actually set that to true. So we don't actually process key repeats. So this state must have changed. Is there? Did we map C to something else and I'm just not aware of it? I don't think so. Should just be press and that should be it. I wonder if this is screwing with it. Is this a general purpose engine or something ad hoc for a game? It's general purpose, yeah. Is the idea. All right. All right, let's try that. Interesting. So it does it once the first time. Is our logic foobar here? Oh, I know what's happening. I think. Well, wait, no. It shouldn't be falling through to this. Let's debug it. So I'm going to go here. And we're going to skip that one because it works correctly the first time. So we hit this case. Now where did this come from? Bind type press. Okay, so this is not... Let's see. It's not a repeat. We do have a change. We don't allow repeats anyways. So it's true. I should probably continue past this one and then check. We only have one key map that's pushed. Oh, wait a minute. We also had something else. I forgot. Where were we adding that? We need to push another key map, actually. That's why the escape isn't working when we go to leave. We need to do one of these. We need the global key map in there. Tim, and how's it going? Good to see you. Welcome. Hope you're doing well. All right. Okay, so we switched camera there, but now it keeps switching right back. For some reason, that's getting called twice, and I cannot understand why. Oh, wait a minute. Console key map. I figured maybe I was pushing the key map twice, but that does not seem to be happening. We only have we're pushing the world key map there. That one's deleted. That's for the console. When we change camera, we're saying that we are in the world mode, switching to the editor mode, right? This is the default case. We switch to this. We pop the current key map off, which would be the world editor. Oh. I changed it in one spot, not the other. That's why. That's why. That's why we're getting it twice. I'll bet this fixes it. Copy pasta again. Dang it. All right. Yes. So, Taman. Let me just make sure that this issue's fixed. Yes, it is. Okay. So, you weren't here for the announcement, but that's going to be the, at least for now, the official name of the game that we're developing. So, we are, this is actually going to be the last episode of the Game Engine series. We're putting that to bed for now. We've started actually developing the game itself. So we've actually set up a different new application, new library, brand new code base for this, and that is the name that I'm going with for now. So, you know, it just sounds a little bit better, a little bit more marketable than what we had before. So the game concept hasn't really changed overall, although I have some ideas of things I want to add to it. But we're now starting to scaffold the game itself. So what I'm working on right now is we have this basic setup. This looks a lot like the test bed did, but it's actually a stripped down version of that. You'll note that we're clearing to a different color just to sort of visually separate it for now. And so one of the first things that we had to do is we didn't actually even have any way to, we didn't have any key bindings or any of that stuff. So we had to set up key bindings. We had to set up key maps to be able to move back and forth between those. Now we've set up a game mode where we have this sort of regular sort of world mode and then an editor mode that we can change to by hitting the C key. And so what that allows us to do is the world mode does not allow us to, that's the mode I'm in right now, it does not allow me to move the camera. The camera will be, that particular camera is going to be attached to the back of a vehicle that follows it around the scene, right? And then the editor mode, when I switch to that, is able to be moved. So you can't really visually see it here, but you can tell by the debug text at the bottom that I'm able to move the camera around, right? And so when I switch, it switches back to that other camera, and when I switch, it switches back, right? And so that is what we have working now. And the escape key now quits as well. So the next thing that we're going to be working on is we're actually going to start to, we're going to start with the track, actually, I think, and start by generating some basic geometry for that. So the way that I envision this working, and I'll explain this when we actually dive into it as well, but the way I envision that working is we're essentially going to define a path using a series of points throughout the scene. Those points will represent or be represented by the way I'm thinking about this. It's going to have a position and a orientation, like a rotation, right? And so it'll have that, and then it'll also have pointers to the next position on the track and the previous position on the track, if there is one. And then the idea is that those will all go around and connect to one another. And so you'll have these points in space that we define eventually in a scene file or some sort of asset configuration for it. And we will build the geometry based off of that. And so the idea that I have is first we're going to start off with a very simple track that's just a couple lanes wide or something like that, that has a basic, surface with some maybe guardrails or something. And then we're also going to have the ability to have the track fork and come back together. Bezier curves are eventually going to be a thing, yep. So we're going to start it with just straight lines first, right? And then we'll get fancy and add curves and stuff once we actually get to that point. So I'm going to start simple and just keep iterating on it, right? I want to get the core mechanics working before we start adding fanciness, right? So it's going to be super basic at first. So we're basically going to define this track. Eventually it's going to allow you to fork and then come back. And then the track also needs to be a closed loop, right? So we'll have that. We'll also be able to modify the Y position to make it go up and down, as well as curve around, stuff like that. And then from there, we should be able to do some more interesting stuff like adding jumps and things like that. But that geometry is essentially going to be used for collision / sliding purposes, if you will. So that's basically going to be what the vehicle sort of rides on top of. And we're going to start off with it being visible, but eventually it's going to be invisible. And that is what the vehicle is going to ride on. And then, we'll be able to build the scene sort of around that to make it, represented make it look really, really nice, and not have to have just pre-generated geometry. We can actually put props and stuff, make it go into water and that kind of thing, without being bound to having to stick to that geometry, right? That geometry is really just going to be collision. But that's going to be the next step, is just generating that geometry and getting essentially a block to slide along it, and be bound by it, and be able to do things like, jump and stuff like that. So that's what we're going to start with, because that's kind of one of the core mechanics of the game that we need to have working before we do much else, right? I'm going to get it working with like just test geometry, just super simple shapes, probably not even define materials right off the bat, right? Just as basic as possible, and then build from there. All right. But that being said, given the time, we're basically out of stream time for tonight. So I didn't accomplish quite as much as I wanted to tonight, but I had to kind of get through explanations of stuff. So when we come back tomorrow night, we are going to be working on the game. I'm probably going to wind up retitling the streams from here on out because the game engine series is officially done at this point. We are going to be touching the game engine. We're going to be updating the game engine, but from here on out, it's going to be game focused, right? So yes, that is where we're essentially winding up. I don't think I'm going to check this code in just yet. I might change my mind and push it like afterwards, but I really also want to come up with a solution where this game isn't part of the core Kohi solution, like this whole thing, right? I really don't want it to be part of the same repo. So I've got to figure out how I want that to work too. All right, let me choose somebody to raid. And before I go, I just want to say to all of you guys, thank you so much for hanging out with me tonight. And I definitely appreciate you guys. And if you haven't followed along, or if you haven't followed yet, please do, because we are going to be doing a lot more stuff, a lot more visual, cool things coming up. So let me see. Let me see if I can find something that's loosely related to what we're doing. Thank you guys for the follows, by the way. Appreciate that. Just trying to find a stream real quick that we can raid. Let's see. I don't know if there's going to be much in the way of C programming tonight. Does not look like it. All right. I think we're going to do something slightly unrelated then. Let's see. I'm going to go ahead and send you guys over to Hypnotic Games. I'm not sure what he's up to right now. It looks like he's doing a game jam or something. So we're gonna check out what he's doing. I'm gonna have to raid and run though. So yeah, but I'll catch you guys tomorrow night, and we'll pick up where we left off. Thank you guys for being here. I appreciate you guys, and I'll see you guys next time.